Hello everybody, I'm some Loudmouth on the internet with an opinion. Like just about all internet nerds who talk about movies on the internet, I am a fan of Star Wars.
Star Wars has had the perfect mixture of space adventure and fantasy escapism, as well as an example of great smart storytelling. But there have certainly been bumps along the way, and that's the case well before the prequels. In 1980, The Empire Strikes Back came out. This is as perfect a sequel to any acclaimed movie as they come. Not only was it better than the original, not only is this easily the best Star Wars movie ever made up until this recording, but it may well be one of the greatest movies ever made, period. Unfortunately, the dreaded trilogy curse that struck many franchises would strike the original Star Wars trilogy.
I mean, I am honestly amazed that so many Star Wars fans will trash every single aspect of the prequel trilogy, but be blissfully unaware of all the huge problems in Return of the Jedi.
The prequel trilogy has its problems that I'm not going to get into with so many previous reviewers before me having talked about them to death, but in my view, they got better as they went along, and ended on a high note, or at least certainly a much higher note than the original trilogy did.
There, I said it.
The biggest problem I have with the ending of the original Star Wars trilogy is how the once feared and terrifying and powerful Galactic Empire are brought to their knees by, these things. These are Ewoks, played by a bunch of midgets in teddy bear pajamas, and these cute little fellows destroy the best of the Galactic Empire.
Oh my goodness.
Think I'm exaggerating?
An entire legion of my best troops awaits them.
Let me play that again so it can really sink in.
An entire legion of my best troops awaits them.
So these weren't just your run-of-the-mill stormtrooper, no. These were some of the best stormtroopers. The best of the Force that is holding the entire galaxy at bay. And how do they perform? But while many adult fans saw the Ewoks as the beginning of the childification of Star Wars that would later continue into the prequel saga, there was one group of people who really loved the Ewoks. Kids.
George Lucas, being the rather shrewd businessman that he is, saw those 80s tots were a goldmine.
And usually when they say kids are a goldmine, they mean parents of the children are a goldmine. You. That's why in November of 1984, we got this for ABC television. Caravan of Courage, an Ewok adventure.
Yes, they actually produced movies based entirely on the Ewoks and set entirely on the forest moon of Endor. These movies are easily the most overlooked and obscure Star Wars movies ever produced. This was actually the second Star Wars movie ever produced for television. The first was the infamous Star Wars Holiday Special. If you haven't seen it, let me tell you, it's probably the worst television special ever produced. And George Lucas would agree.
In 1978, when I let people make a Star Wars TV special without me.
The holiday special, I remember.
It came out so bad! I hate it! I hate it! I hate it! I hate it!
George Lucas was so unsatisfied with this piece of shit, he demanded his name be taken off the credits and did everything in his power to hide it and make fans forget about it. It was broadcast one time only and never got any kind of home video release, but it has survived thanks to the power of bootlegs and internet nerds searching for obscure crap online. But George Lucas did put his name on this special, and he allowed it to be rebroadcast several times throughout the 90s on the Disney Channel. Imagine that, a connection between Disney and Star Wars. That'll never happen. And in 2004, it was given an official Lucasfilm DVD release. 2 years before the original versions of the original trilogy were seen worthy of that honor. Yet in the public conscious, this movie is even more obscure than the holiday special. Most people haven't even heard of it.
So, with the upcoming release of The Force Awakens just a few weeks away, I figure it's time to review this obscure Star Wars project. This is a review of Caravan of Courage, an Ewok adventure.
We open on the forest moon of Endor, presumably a few years before the events of Return of the Jedi.
Our story begins in a time long, long ago, deep in an enchanted forest on the distant moon of Endor.
Anybody else recognize that voice?
If I live to be 100, I'll never be able to forget that big snowstorm a couple of years ago. The weather closed in and, well, you might not believe it, but the world almost missed Christmas.
That's right. This special is narrated by Burl Ives. His soft, pleasant voice is here to remind your kids of a much better children's special your kids could be watching instead.
Every day since the crash, you've told them not to leave the ship. I've told them too.
We open not with the Ewoks, but instead these two people who crash-landed on Endor.
They're only little kids.
They're searching for their lost children who wandered away from the ship when suddenly they meet one of Endor's less friendly inhabitants. After the opening title and credits, we finally meet the titular characters of the movie. Since they don't speak English, we have to infer what they say from body language and from Burl Ives' convenient narration. It's kind of like a nature documentary about teddy bear people.
On the moon of Endor, Deej tries to summon two of his sons who went into the woods and have not returned.
Now we see an Ewok named Deej use a hang glider to search for his missing son.
Deej will use his skin glider to search for his missing sons.
Hey, this video can only have one narrator, okay? And on this alien planet in a galaxy far, far away, Wicket's dad is set loose by a goat. Just an ordinary goat, okay?
Wait, what's with the goat? I thought we were on a forest moon in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes, Earth animals have appeared in Star Wars movies before. Of course, humans are Earth animals, and they play an important part in every Star Wars movie. But this movie has quite a few of them. Couldn't they have at least dressed them up or something? Why is Endor so filled with Earth life? It takes you out of the whole galaxy far, far away, doesn't it? Deej, after finding his two lost sons, also finds something very interesting. He finds the ship, and we meet our two child stars. And they are as good as you would expect them to be.
No, Mace, no!
I guess George Lucas really likes the name Mace.
Be quiet, Cinder.
They weren't hurting me.
These might be the guys who have Mom and Dad.
I think they want to be our friends.
Geez, that's the best take you could get out of her? You thought Jake Lloyd was bad. I know good child actors are really hard to come by, but, man.
The Ewoks eventually get the best of this trigger-happy kid, and they take both of them back to their village. In an attempt to pad this movie's length, Sindel immediately upon arriving to the Ewok village, suddenly and inexplicably becomes very sick.
Sindel, are you okay?
Mace, I don't feel good.
Sindel. Sindel.
From the moment the invaders arrived, breathed our air, ate and drank, they were doomed. They were undone, destroyed, after all of man's weapons and devices had failed, by the tiniest creatures that God in his wisdom put upon this earth.
We need more medicine. We need more of this.
Well, in order to get more medicine, they decide to go to an ancient tree with some magical juice or something that'll help cure Sindel, but not before Mace, being kind of a dumbass, encounters the first new Endor life form not seen in Return of the Jedi. Mace gets attacked by this sock puppet, but thankfully the kind-hearted Ewoks are here to save his dumbass.
I guess having a Muppet tongue is the best way to capture prey on Endor. I have a Muppet tongue too, see?
After finally getting her medicine, Sindel starts to feel all better, and we get a scene with her and Wicket the Ewok learning Galactic Basic, aka English. This would come in handy later in the Ewok movies.
We came on a star cruiser and we crashed.
We crashed? Star cruiser?
Star Cruiser. Crest. Star Cruiser. Crest.
What's kind of bothersome about this is that we see Wicket the Ewok in Return of the Jedi, and that's presumably after the events of this movie, and he seems to not know a word of Galactic Basic. I'm wondering, did he just forget it all?
I won't hurt you. Now come here.
No. Why can't we stay here with them?
Stay here with these walking hairbrushes? Come on, Cinto, they're animals.
No, they're not. I like them.
But Mace, in the middle of the night while the Ewoks are sleeping, decides to take his gun back and escape from the creatures that were nice enough to give him a roof over his head and save his sister's life purely out of the goodness of their hearts.
What an asshole.
The result is that Mace and Sindel are attacked by what looks like a giant Endor pig monster, which of course the Ewoks come and save them from. Okay, the fight with that monster is probably the highlight of this movie. I really like this scene, and that's a pretty good special effect for a television special of this time. Keep in mind, this is over 30 years ago.
Hey, Cindo, look!
Mace, that's Daddy's life monitor. Mommy and Daddy are alive.
I told you.
Mace and Sindel learned from some collars on the creature's dead body that the Hellhog was some kind of trained dog, and its master is holding their parents.
Mace must find the master of the beast.
They go to Logray the Mystic in order to find out, and it's here where we get possibly the most controversial aspect of these among Star Wars fans. The Ewok movies feature magic of various kinds.
That's Dad!
You can, of course, argue that Star Wars always had its mystical elements, with the Force playing such a big part in every movie. And you could argue that beings across the galaxy would call the Force by different names, and many of them would see it as something magical. But these Ewoks in this movie seem to have abilities with the Force that the Jedi Council and the Dark Lord of the Sith never seem to manage, which is just strange to me. How do these teddy bear people living on a backwater forest moon know more than the Dark Lord of the Sith and Yoda? It wouldn't be the last time that dark magic elements would make their way into a Star Wars project, as the later Clone Wars animated series featured the magical Night Sisters and Mother Talza, who were primary antagonists in many episodes. And to think, it all started right here with Ewok Adventures.
That's Mommy and Daddy.
We find out from that magical thingy that their parents are held by a giant creature called the Gorax. The Ewoks suddenly decide to help them out in rescuing their parents.
Please help us. They're gonna die.
We help you.
Yum yum.
Unbig Gorax.
Man, the Ewoks are a lot nicer in this movie, aren't they? Remember in Return of the Jedi when they were willing to set Han and Chewie on fire and eat them? Now they're willing to help these kids find their parents in exchange for nothing.
But before they can go on their epic fantasy quest, Logray the Mystic gives them some magical gifts to help them along the way.
Deej, as leader, is presented with the white wings of hope. The red wings of courage are given to the eldest son, Wichi. Wicket receives a magic walking stick, while the blue wings of strength go to his brother Whittle. Sindel, the candle of pure light.
My gift for you, Legolas, is a bow of the Galadrim, and for you, Samwise Gamgee, elven rope made of heathline.
Thank you, my lady.
Farewell, Frodo Baggins. I give you the light of Erenniel, our most beloved star.
Wise magical figure giving our heroes gift before their journey? Classic fantasy trope.
This must be mine. I don't want to rock.
I got 5 pieces of candy. I got a chocolate bar. I got a quarter. I got a rock.
It's just another stupid rock.
So they start their journey, but now without Mace's constant, annoying whining.
I don't want to get in there. I do not want to get in there. That place is for kiddies. I'd rather walk.
Then why are we stopping?
Hey, you're wasting time.
Yeah, Mace, you talk back to those creatures who are helping you rescue your parents and risking their lives purely out of the goodness of their heart. It shows how bad writers tend to write child characters sometimes, having them be needlessly defiant for no reason. So they are off on their journey, and shortly after find a new Ewok who agrees to join based solely on the goodness of his heart. But Mace feels the need to have a dick measuring contest with him before letting him join.
You think we care if you're coming or not? Yeah, you might be big, you might be strong, but obviously you're no warrior. Watch this. Can I have the tooth? Would you please come with us? We need you.
This is the equivalent of a prostitute demanding you do hopscotch before she lets you pay her to have sex.
The crystal belongs to Kank, the Ewok priestess.
And here's where the movie starts to get really, really strange. We meet yet another Ewok mystic, and then suddenly this happens.
What the? So what? It turned into a lizard. Big deal.
Big deal? Big deal? If I saw somebody turn a rock into a lizard, I'd probably listen to everything they ever had to say. And no, supernatural events like this are not commonplace in the Star Wars galaxy, so there is no logical reason why Mace or anyone else should be so nonchalant about it. We get a few more bizarre obstacles thrown in the character's way in order to pad this movie's length, like this river that magically teleports you underwater for some reason. That's just silly. Yeah, and get this, only Wicket's magical stick can actually pierce the water, and that's how they rescue Mace. Well, okay. What's the point again? I mean, it's not just that this movie's fantasy rules aren't consistent with other Star Wars projects. It's not really even consistent with itself. The rules are just all over the place. I mean, where's this pool come from? Who made it? What the hell? In keeping with this movie being more of a fairy tale than an actual Star Wars movie, this movie also teaches us that Endor is populated with fairies.
I do believe in fairies. I do.
I do believe in fairies. I do believe in fairies.
I do believe in fairies.
Then in another very strange random scene, all the Wispies all combine inside Sindel's candle into one single Wispy. Maybe that's how George Lucas got the idea for the end of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Hey, look what I got.
The next day, they finally make it to the matte painting of the Gorax's lair. And with the magical rock thingy that Mace was stupid enough to toss aside, they find the way to go and decide to blast their way in with a good old-fashioned Star Wars blaster. Finally, something Star Warsy. So all the Ewoks and Mace and Sindel all enter the cave and bring only what you can take with you until they're suddenly attacked by a giant spider that looks like a Halloween store prop. Oh, God. Give me a break. Seriously, for only $43.99, Costco sold one that was much more realistic than that. Eventually, an even bigger spider comes, and no more realistic. Seriously, the thing barely moves. I guess they spent this movie's entire budget on that pig monster from earlier. Seriously, that thing looks terrible. Even by the standards of 80s television, just terrible. This is like the worst looking on-screen monster since the giant claw. They eventually use a Jedi mind trick on it, and then it falls splat. Only to later encounter the Gorax at his meal. It comes down now to basically a big man in a furry suit chasing around little people in furry suits. He uses Godzilla-style tricks of playing the camera in a slight slow motion to make the creature look large, which, for the most part, works pretty well. May shoots up there with the help of a homemade catapult, and it's here where we get easily the dumbest part of this movie.
Gotta get out of here.
What? You had that rope on you the whole time? Then why didn't you escape yourself? You were there for days. The Gorax never went to sleep? What the hell? Little things like this practically ruined the movie. Could have easily been fixed by having Mace throw it up to her.
So, with the help of the rope that, let me remind you, they had with them the entire frigging time, they finally decide to make a run for it, with the Gorax straight on their tail.
Where's Mace?
Geez, these parents aren't any better at acting than their children. I guess stilted acting is hereditary.
Get him in the arena!
With help of their fairy friend, they manage to repel the Gorax, but at a cost.
Come on. You can do it. You're brave. You're strong. You're my friend.
Friend. Hirota.
No. No, please don't die. No.
Oh, Sir Teddy Bear, may your legacy live on forever through the stars.
So they eventually just blast the Gorax down the ledge. And everyone is reunited and they all live happily ever after.
You.
Bingo! Hi, Mommy and Daddy. That's what Dad. Oh, Daddy.
They all celebrate their successful mission and toast their lost friend, and on that note, the movie comes to a close.
So that was Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure, and it's pretty much as good as you'd expect.
It's a silly fantasy movie from the 80s that has little, if anything, to do with Star Wars, but cynically cashing in on kids' love of cute characters from Star Wars. The acting of its child leads is often terrible, and some of its random fantasy elements thrown in there are head-scratchingly odd and downright random. This movie isn't really terrible per se, but I can't recommend this movie to any adults unless they're huge Star Wars buffs who need to have everything Star Wars related. But if you have kids who like the Ewoks from Return of the Jedi, I can totally see them enjoying this movie. It's not a worthy Star Wars movie at all, but it's no holiday special either. It's just kind of bland, and it's easy to see why it fell into obscurity.
My point is, Star Wars is awesome, and even the lesser Star Wars projects like this movie, they still offer something. That's why on the 18th, I'll be there waiting. May the Force be with you, everybody. I'm some loudmouth on the internet, and you just heard my opinion.